Hello and welcome to Major League Fantasy Football Weekly. I'm your host, Lou Landers, coming to you from Hollywood, California. With me today, as always, is my co-host and fantasy football writer, Ron Mad Dog McLeese. Ron, what's cooking?
Oh man, so excited to do the first show with you guys today. We got a cast of characters today, and I'll let you do the rest of the introductions. But I'm really excited, man. It's there's a lot to talk about, and we're gonna chew the meat off the bone today because I'm a mad dog, and I got some guys in the dog pound with me today.
Well, I'm happy to have you here with me, man. I'm happy to have you here. My other guest today is our X's and O's man, Jeff Nelson. Jeff, how's everything going?
It's going great, fellas. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today, and I look forward to our first one, rocking it out.
Great, great. Well, Dennis Dunbar is here joining us. He's a former football writer for Major League Fantasy Sports. And Dennis, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, as you said, my name's Dennis Dunbar, and I'm currently a writer at FakePigskin.com. I host a weekly podcast called The Angle of Pursuit, and this year I will be on the Fantasy Pros Consensus Rankings, where you can see my weekly rankings and projections and kind of see where I align with everybody else as far as accuracy and things like that. So I'm excited you guys have me on today.
Well, we're very happy to have you here, and I do appreciate you coming on. Again, do you want to remind people where they can check out your articles?
Yeah, FakePigskin.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at LionsDenNFL.
Awesome. Okay, great. I do want to mention that our special guest, Brian Robinson, could not make it today due to family emergency. We do hope that everything is okay and that we will see him on the show here in the future. Today's show, we will be discussing and breaking down key players who changed teams this offseason, whether it be via free agency or the trade market. As always, we do encourage our fans to call in and ask questions to our experts. Before we do officially get going here today, I do want to thank all of our partners. Sportspalooza Radio, who does host the Major League Fantasy Sports Baseball show every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Brian Lures, the owner of Real Deal Dynasty Sports. White River Graphics, who you can check out at wrgraphics.biz, and Ron Chandler of chandlerpark.com. For all you fantasy football players out there, Major League Fantasy Sports has announced that they have 4 available teams in their football leagues. Please email majorleaguefantasysports@gmail.com to register. So there are a ton of great players to talk about here today. Let's get started. I'm going to go to Jeff here first. Jeff, tell me about your thoughts on Darrelle Revis. It's now his second time here with the New York Jets. What do you think his impact's going to be?
I think Revis' impact is going to be significant this year, right? The Jets and then Kamara going back there. The Jets, Todd Bowles, it runs a good 3-4 defense where he's very aggressive, like he was in Arizona. And when you look at the breakdown of what he does, like he was successful in Arizona because he had 2 strong outside corners. And I think with his defensive coordinator, they're really going to make an impact. I just think Darrelle Revis is going to be an excellent fit for that team. I think the Jets can be somewhat surprising this year because Bowles is a really good, aggressive coach in the locker room, but keeps his personality out of the paper, unlike the previous head coach.
Okay. Well, what do you think about Revis' impact specifically on the Jets' defense?
Well, I think Revis is going to offer them an opportunity to go run a lot of bump and run, man coverage, be able to sit there and take that game away so that the front 7 can be very aggressive. You know, when you have players like Wilkerson and Richard Sherman up front, that means they can be very aggressive when blitzing. Cardinals blitzed 46.5% of the time last year. So, you know, having a corner like Darrelle Revis in the back in the corner to protect you on those deep balls and those coverage routes is very good.
Makes sense to me. Those are all very good points. Ron, over to you about Darrelle Revis.
Well, I just want to start off by saying, yeah, Jeff. I think Jeff hit the nail on the head. Definitely, everything he is said about Revis is spot on. I actually, just to let the audience know, I am a writer for Major League Fantasy Sports, obviously, but right now my specialty is cornerbacks and safeties. So my article actually posted this morning at 9 a.m. on Major League Fantasy Sports, and actually the first player that I'm highlighting as far as a free agent acquisition this offseason is Revis. And the main reason I'm looking at Revis, first off, I'm shocked that the New England Patriots let him go. He was such a great presence for them in their defense, and the fact that the Jets were able to, the clock hadn't even expired 24 hours before they decided not to give him his tender, and he was already signed with the Jets. A $70 million contract. So Revis is getting paid. And there's a reason why he's getting paid the big bucks. That's because he's one of the best, if not the best, shutdown corner in the NFL right now. And just piggybacking off what Jeff said about him, with Bowles, and just what he said, he's got a compliment. Not only did they go out and get Revis, they have Buster Skrine, who is a very underrated corner, and they also signed Antonio Cromartie. So those two guys, I think they're going to be able to take some of the pressure off of Revis. And I think also you're going to have to test, you're going to have to look at Revis sometimes a lot more than when he was playing, say, for instance, with the Bucks and even with the Patriots. He was the guy. There wasn't these secondary pieces really that really scared opposing quarterbacks. So, yeah, they could just basically stay away from Revis Island completely. And that's why I like those other signings, and I think those are going to be significant signings for the Jets defense in general, and I'm pretty high on the Jets defense as it is. I think that those additions in the secondary are going to really boost them a lot, and I think Revis is going to return to his, glory days when he really put up those big-time defensive numbers. So everything I see, I like about this signing. So he's going to be, he's definitely going to be a guy I would highly recommend IDP owners to go out and target and get on their rosters.
Very interesting. Gave us a lot to think about there. Dennis, do you have any thoughts on Darrelle Revis?
Yeah, it's a homecoming, and the Jets' defense was already nasty. They had one of the best front sevens in football. Now you put Revis and Skrine and Cromartie on that back end. I just feel sorry for opposing defenses, or offenses, I should say, especially New England, because I heard they snubbed Revis's mom at the Super Bowl ring ceremony. So Revis is probably going to be headhunting in New England when they play this year. But no, I think the Jets addressed what they needed on defense, and I think they're going to be good to go. That, like I said, their pass rush is nasty, and then they got Leonard Williams, who fell in the draft. It's going to be a hard time scoring against the Jets.
Yeah, I personally love what the Jets did. I think they might have one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. One thing I was going to ask you guys is, where do you rank this Jets defense now with, the front seven that they did have, and now adding Revis and Cromartie and everything else? Jeff, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of this Jets defense, and especially in the division that they play in? Are they really going up against any number one quality wide receivers?
In the division, it depends on what Miami works on. When you got those wide receivers out in Miami that has the potential to be something special with a couple of signings they made, that might be, an offense to be concerned about. And then I think the main thing you got to worry about when it comes to the Jets is the linebacking core and how well they gel together with this defense, right? With the corners and the secondary that they have, they can be on that bump and run man coverage a lot, but that 3-4 defense has got to be aggressive. And I think they could be at the end of the season maybe a top 15, maybe even in the top 10 defense, depending on if everything works out in that linebacking core.
Do you think that ranking and those moves is enough to get them into the playoffs?
I think they could be an 8-18. I think they could be right on the cusp.
I guess is your answer.
Yeah.
You don't think that they have that chance. Okay, Ron, how about yourself? What do you think about the Jets' playoff chances with these acquisitions?
Well, the defensive side is going to keep them in a lot of games, and that's why I'm obviously a little more optimistic than Jeff is, to be honest with you, because I think the linebacking core is not terrible. It's not great. It's somewhere between. So I think that is the major question mark. Jeff is correct in saying that, but I like all these other pieces, and that line, like Dennis said, is freaking nasty, man. Like, Sheldon Richardson is going to take the next step forward. You got Williams in there, and you also have Wilkerson, who's a guy that was angry about his contract, and I think he's going to come in there. He's going to play angry. He's going to play mean. He thinks, okay, they drafted this young kid, so he's got to feel a little bit of heat. And if he wants to get paid, he's going to have to play like a top player out there. So I like that. Realistically, I see him as a top 10 defense this year. If the linebacking core is halfway decent, subpar, I think they'll be in the top 10 defensively. As far as their overall record, I'd probably agree with Jeff. I think overall record, they're going to be somewhere 8-8, and that's the only reason I'm saying that is because of their quarterback play. I think everything else is in line. We're going to see Geno Smith probably, throw a lot of picks and have a lot of turnovers. But if he makes a step forward, I still think Fitzpatrick's the guy. But I'm not going to go into detail with that offense that much. I'll just, to answer your question, I think Jeff's probably about right. 8-8 or 9-7 possibly. I still see him as a borderline team. Probably not going to make the playoffs though.
The question becomes how many games could a quarterback lose you this year? And I think that's what's going to be the Jets' biggest problem this year is that quarterback is going to lose on games.
Very well said. I think that's absolutely their biggest weakness. I can't believe they didn't try and address that during the offseason. I mean, I know they brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick, and maybe he can be a bridge this season until they can figure it out for next season, but I don't know.
True.
Yeah, exactly. They have to try and figure it out, maybe hopefully get someone in a draft next year. Dennis, before we move on, what are your thoughts on the Jets' playoff chances? Yay, nay, middle of the pack?
I'm a little more optimistic about it than you guys, and I'll tell you one reason why is because to me the trump card is Chan Gailey. I love what Chan Gailey does on offense and brings on offense. We already addressed that we think the defense is going to be solid, so the offense is where it lies. They brought in Brandon Marshall, who is one of my favorite receivers. He's still a top 10 talent in this league. Eric Decker is a great number 2. He was miscast last year as a number 1. They got Devin Smith from Ohio State, who's an absolute monster and very underrated as a receiver. I know he gets pegged as just a deep threat, but he does a lot more than that. Jason Morrow is a decent tight end. And I think Geno Smith showed some promise. And I think under Chan Gailey, he can actually be productive. And we've seen Ryan Fitzpatrick be productive in Buffalo under Chan Gailey. And Fitzpatrick is serviceable. I mean, we're a fantasy show, so I think either one of them guys could support the Jets from a fantasy standpoint. But the reason I like Geno Smith with Chan Gailey is because what Geno Smith did so well at West Virginia was a spread offense, and that's exactly what Chan Gailey brings to the New York Jets is a spread offense, 3 and 4 wide receiver sets every time. Now, the hard part to me as far as pegging the Jets offensively is going to be their backfield. I personally think Chris Ivory is the most talented running back in there. He's a violent runner. He's hard to bring down. He's almost, if there's a player close to Marshawn Lynch, to me it would be Chris Ivory. He's not quite Marshawn Lynch, but he runs with that edge. He runs with that nastiness. But I'm afraid that's going to be a full-blown committee with, Ridley and Stacy's got a chip on his shoulder now after being snubbed, and he had a good year. And so as far as their backfield goes, I'm going to kind of stay away from that. And I could even see what I don't see is their receiving back. Like, I don't know, is it going to be by Lil Powell? I don't know, that whole backfield scares me. If I had to draft one, it's going to be Chris Ivory because I usually bank on talent. So I think, like I said before, Ivory's the most talented. But, I think the Jets could surprise. Every year we see a team in a division, just about every year. I'm not sure that it happened last year, but it's usually been the trend where a team will go from last in their division to first in their division. And depending on what you think in New England, depending on how this shakes out with Brady, the Patriots could potentially fall in a hole, pretty early on. But I want to go back to something you said earlier, Lou. You asked if there was any receivers that in that division that's a threat, and I think that division is loaded with good receivers. I think Devontae Parker's an absolute stud if he's used correctly. We'll see if it was, Ryan Tannehill's lack of ability on the deep throw, or if it was Mike Wallace, or it's just a combination of the two. But, that's important for a guy like Devontae Parker, who, when I watched on film, he got better the deeper he went. So I really like Parker. I already mentioned Brandon Marshall and Eric Deckard. I think those two guys are both legitimate receivers. And then Sammy Watkins, you can't forget about him. Last year, I think he was, I like to say the victim of the system. He still posted almost a 1,000-yard season with that situation there. So, I think that division on a whole is on the rise. So, it wouldn't surprise me if any one of them teams finished and made the playoffs in a wild card spot.
Yeah.
And
Jeff, sorry. Go right ahead, Jeff.
I'm sorry, Lou. I was gonna say, Brian, you made some excellent points when it came to the wide receiver core, right? And that East coming open this year, and I think that's gonna be contingent on really how successful Todd Bowles' defense is. Because if you look at the scheme from Rex Ryan to Todd Bowles, it's really not that difference. It's really that base 3-4 defense where you have the outside linebackers, so they can cover the running back or the tight ends, or they can go out and blitz and overload blitz you to one side on your man side or their offensive line or whatever this coverage is there in the back and doing on the offensive line. But I think the Jets will be able to cover those receivers this year. And I think you made a great point when it comes to saying what's going to happen with Buffalo and Sammy Watkins and Parker out there in Miami. I think those are great points. I just think like Geno Smith is the key to their success this year.
Well, I have to agree with everything that Dennis said and most of what Jeff said there. I do think is that I think the Jets actually have a good shot at making the playoffs. I think that entire AFC East division is looking at anywhere from 8 to 10 wins apiece. I don't think anyone's going to run away with it, and I don't think anyone's going to be a bottom feeder. I think it's a highly competitive division, and because of what's going on with Brady missing some of that time, I think that definitely helps level the playing field. But let's move along from the AFC East for a moment and go over to the Philadelphia Eagles and their new acquisition of Kiko Alonso. Jeff, tell me about Kiko Alonso and the impact he's going to have there.
The impact he's going to have, and me being a Cowboys fan, I am scared of the Eagles' defense this year. I think they can go from, I think they were ranked 28th overall last year to
they were terrible last year defensively.
Yes, and I think they will be going to top 10 guaranteed. And the reason why you have to look at it, that Kiko making that trade from in 2013, he had 159 tackles. Now, he missed all of last year with his torn ACL, right, in July. And then they got him this year, and you pair him with, you got D'Amico Ryans there. You got Kendricks there as their linebacking core. They're going to be a very aggressive defense. They're going to be on the field a lot. They're very young. And I think they're going to be very good this year when it comes to the Eagles' defense. I think the Alonso signing is significant to their coverage based on their 3-4 scheme that Billy Davis likes to run out there. So it's going to be huge. I just think like that 159 tackles, he can hit that easily this year. He knows a nose for football.
All right, Ron, over to you. Kiko Alonso.
Oh, I love this trade, and I think it worked out perfectly for Philadelphia. Not only did they get another key defensive piece on that defense, which, as Jeff said, it was horrendous last year. They needed to make some big changes. Shady McCoy, which we'll cover later, he just wasn't Chip Kelly's boy, man. And we know Chip Kelly well enough to know that he will let no player stand in the way of what he wants to do and the way that he wants to run his team. And, it's all Chip Kelly, so, and as I would say, all Chip Kelly's chips are all pushed to the middle of the table because he's all in on the way he wants to run his team. And, this is his guy. He went out and got him. And Kiko Alonso, just like Jeff said, he had a monster rookie season. And I think he can definitely replicate those or duplicate those numbers in this defense. And obviously he's got a history with Chip Kelly, and I think that's only going to help. As Jeff was saying, DeMarco Ryans and Kendricks in the middle. Is there a scarier? The question might be, and I'd like to ask Jeff, is there a scarier linebacker core in the NFL right now than those three guys in the middle? When you pair Ryans with Kendricks and Kiko Alonso, to me that's got the. Go ahead, Jeff. What do you think?
No.
We're having a little bit of technical difficulty hearing Jeff actually at the moment. So while we try and get that sorted out, I'm going to ask Dennis to give us his thoughts on Kiko Alonso.
I really like the deal for Philadelphia. It ended perfectly for Chip Kelly. Think about it. He gave LaShawn McCoy and essentially got back Kiko Alonso, DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews. I mean, I know he's not that brilliant to where he planned it that way, but it worked out perfectly for Philadelphia. They got a great linebacker, a guy who's be a signal caller for 10 years plus, I say, as long as he stays healthy. And he's a guy who buys into the system, and that's, to me, just watching Chip Kelly, that's more important to him than talent, because he feels like he has a drill bit offense and defense. What I mean by that is it doesn't matter who he puts in, the drill's going to make it work. And I kind of believe that to a certain extent. I know statistically they finished 28th, but as far as like fantasy terms, they was beasting. I mean, I remember I was in one league with Ron, and he just, streamed defense. It was a team defense league. It wasn't IDP. He picked up Philadelphia's defense in like week 2 or 3, man, and started them every week. And they gave him a significant advantage. I mean, I remember playing them. The one week I played them, they put up like 30 points and just crushed the skull of my team, the defense alone. So, it doesn't matter if they finish in the bottom or top half of the league as far as statistical, as long as they put up fantasy points, and that's one thing that Philadelphia does.
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Jeff, what were you going to chime in here with?
I was going to chime in and try to answer the question earlier, was that, listen, they remind me, that linebacker core remind me of what the 49ers were 3 years ago when everybody was trying to get Bowman, Smith, and trying to grab Patrick Willis. Like, that linebacker core, any three of those guys, especially in IDP leagues, can be one of your top linebackers this year that you're playing week in, week out, and the only time you need to replace them in the lineup is when it's a bye week. They're going to get you points. They know how to they run to the football. They're very good at recognizing what's coming towards them. I just think this linebacking core is something to be scared of in the NFL this year, and this is coming from a Dallas fan. And look, they got Alfonso, right? Alonzo, I apologize. They got him, and then they got DeMarco Murray. Really, did you lose anything with losing LeSean McCoy? You gained a better linebacker and got a good running back to replace LeSean McCoy. Did you really lose anything?
That's a great point, and we will actually be talking about DeMarco Murray a little later. But first, we're talking about losing LeSean McCoy, which is probably the perfect segue into discussing LeSean McCoy and his impact on the Buffalo Bills. I'm actually going to start with Dennis here. Dennis, what are your thoughts on this acquisition for the Bills? Could this put them over the top?
I don't think so. I think their quarterback hurdle is going to be too much. We'll see what Tyrod Taylor, turns out to be. I kind of am optimistic about Taylor, to be honest with you, because I know Gary Kubiak was really trying to get him to sign in Denver. So that tells me that Kubiak, who's worked with him in Baltimore, sees something in this kid. So we'll see. I mean, I know he's a heck of an athlete. He's a mobile quarterback, which could bode well for LeSean McCoy. If you think back to the days of Vic and McCoy, that was pretty good. But, as far as McCoy, I mean, I know he's only 26 years old, but he's going into his 7th year in the league, and he's had a lot of carries. He's had a pretty big workload for a smaller guy, and that was one of the issues and concerns with him coming out of Pittsburgh, was that, he had a smaller frame, and he might not hold up under the wear and tear. And, we'll see. LeSean McCoy kind of has a pattern where he'll have a good year and a bad year, a good year and a bad year. We'll see if that happens, but I definitely think he took a hit. Buffalo Bills line is nowhere near as athletic and as good as Philadelphia's, and they don't do the same things. He's going to be more that Rex Ryan football, that smash mouth, and to me, LeSean McCoy is not that type of back. He's more that zone running back who, likes to find that hole instead of that, one cut, get it up the field and go kind of guy that, Rex Ryan's offense is built for. So I'm a bit concerned about McCoy. I do think he is ownable. He's not going to be in that top tier of fantasy running backs for me. I got him right now. He's in, hovering around RB10 for me. I still have him projected at about 270 carries, about, low 4.3, 4.2 yards per carry, which would be about an 1,100-yard season. But I think he's going to take a dip in his receptions. I only have him projected at maybe around 30. So right now I have him coming in at, in standard fantasy scoring at just under 200 fantasy points. So that keeps him out of that top tier. Even though right now in fantasy drafts he's not being drafted in that top tier, he is being drafted at the tail end of the first round or even into the second round. So I'm okay with taking him there, but I'm definitely going to not expect the same, 2013 LaShawn McCoy that run the NFL rushing title. And like I said, and I think Philadelphia, I heard reports that they are into this GPS testing and where they basically gauge a player's performance somehow with GPS. I don't even know exactly how it works, but they felt like LaShawn McCoy was losing some steps and kind of on the downward trend. Sorry. So I kind of seen that too a little bit. Last year. We'll see if it was just the situation, him being unhappy, a lot of discord and all that stuff. But like I said, I'm not super excited about McCoy, and I'm not excited about anybody in Buffalo outside of their defense, because I think their defense is pretty nasty. I mean, they embarrassed Aaron Rodgers last year, and that says a lot.
Yeah, well, I think anyone that can embarrass Aaron Rodgers definitely has some moves to make. I definitely think that the Bills they're an interesting team. I mean, I wouldn't count them out necessarily, but like the Jets, they do have some quarterback issues. Ron, tell me what you think about LaShawn McCoy, that move for the Bills, and if that's going to be an improvement for them, or if it might just be another, hope for those Buffalo Bills fans. They're just let down year after year after year.
Well, they say hope floats, right? Well, I think this ship's going under. I'll be honest with you. And just piggybacking off what Dennis just said with the quarterback situation, what scares me the most. Now, anyone knows once you become one-dimensional as an offense, you're asking for trouble. So with Tyrod Taylor, if he's not the guy and he's not who they think he is, which is funny because just a second ago I pulled up a comparable for Taylor, and it was Seneca Wallace. So, hopefully he's better than Seneca Wallace.
I'd hope so.
Yeah, and that's the problem I have with this offense is once it becomes one-dimensional, then they're going to load up the box against McCoy. And not only was he doing what Dennis just said, he was dancing too much in the backfield last year. That's going to get him in trouble. And you look at his yards per carry last year, it dipped from 5.1 yards per carry in 2013 to 4.2 yards per carry in last year. So I think that's a downward trend where in this offense, in this new offense he's in, if there's no passing game and the quarterback situation doesn't improve at all, that 4.2 is going to go down even lower, I believe. Now, he's going to be a high-volume running back, but, again, that scares me too because, if he's in the upwards of 350 carries, he's going to get you that high volume as far as carries goes, but it also is going to give more wear and tear to his body, and I believe you're asking for an injury here. So, if I'm drafting McCoy, I'm definitely going to try and back him up with, either old wily veteran Fred Jackson, or I'm going to go out there and maybe even get a Bryce Brown late in the draft, just to kind of handcuff him. But the other thing I'll say real quickly on McCoy is another red flag to me with him would be the receptions per year. And if you guys are in PPR leagues, although everybody's watching, you're in PPR league, you're looking for a running back that's going to help you with the passes, catches out of the backfield, and the guys that can take it to the house. He just hasn't been that same player. I mean, we look going back, 2010, this guy had 78 receptions. In that dwindled to 48. 54, 52, 28 last year. So that's a downward trend to me. And as a PPR owner, I am scared. I am concerned. And if I have him in Dynasty, which I do, actually I played with Dennis in the Expert League. Actually, Dennis and I won a championship last year with this team. We went high, and McCoy was our first pick. And to this day, we both knew that if we had tried to trade McCoy before he got traded to the Bills, we would have got a lot more on that return. So my point here is that if you have McCoy and he has a couple good games early in the season, try and sell high on those big games because I think in the long run his value is going to go down further from here. So I don't really like the move, to be honest with you, and I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Well, that's definitely a very interesting point of view. It gives a lot to think about with regards to McCoy. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add on McCoy? I know that these guys went into a lot of detail already, so anything at all that you want to add, or whether you agree or disagree with what they've been saying?
I can't believe I'm on the island by myself. I feel like it should call it Nelson Island right now. I mean, like, am I really by myself? The offensive coordinator is Greg Roman. Do we realize what he did with Colin Kaepernick and how, he made Colin Kaepernick the quarterback that has made him successful over the years in San Francisco, and he's very successful, going to be turn Tyrod Taylor into that run option. You got LaShawn McCoy is going to get fed the ball. He's going to be able to bounce plays. They're going to run a lot of screen plays. They're going to have a lot of dump-off passes. And I think he's going to be what he was 2 years ago when he first got into the Chip Kelly offense. I mean, I think Greg Roman is key to his success. And then you got Sammy Watkins out there you could just throw the ball anywhere on the football field and he'll go up and get it. I just think LaShawn McCoy, the offense is not going to be something to write home about. But fantasy-wise, the reason why we're here today, you got to pick him up and go with him. I'm running with him. I'm keeping him in our League One. Like, he's a keeper in my mind because I think he's going to have that much production this year. And you're talking about volumes. Yes, all right, he could get hurt, but Fred Jackson got hurt every year. C.J. Spiller got hurt. I mean, look, it's part of the game of football, and you got to have a backup plan in place. But I think, having Greg Roman out there is going to be as his offensive coordinator, knows how to take his skills and just harness it to make it something special.
See, I think sorry to interject here. I think Greg Roman actually hurts his value. I wasn't impressed with what Roman did in San Francisco. I thought San Francisco was a very boring offense. I don't think they used their players well. I mean, look at Vernon Davis. He had a worse year of his career. I mean, I'm not impressed by that at all. And I'm worried about the downgrade of offensive line. You got Philadelphia Eagles, who's one of the better, probably top 3 in run blocking, as according to Pro Football Focus, to the Buffalo Bills, who was second to last. I mean, that's a huge downgrade, in my opinion. That's my biggest concern.
But doesn't track record speak here? I mean, he was 49-22 during his tenure with the 49ers. And I wouldn't say they had a great offensive line there. I mean, you had Frank Gore and you had some running back there, but they were able to take what the weapons he had. Greg Roman knows what he has, and I think Greg Roman is going to use him and excel him throughout the offense. Like the 49-22 and what San Francisco did with those years with Jim Harbaugh, I can't believe that hurts his value. It'd be interesting to see where we're at when we play this next year and say, all right, Brian, you're right, man. You're gonna be like, Jeff, you were right, and here's your drink, here's your alcohol beverages, because you want to ride out with him all year. So
they're nowhere near the same talent, though. Buffalo's roster is nowhere near the talent that San Francisco's roster is. It's not even close.
But also LaShawn McCoy is a very talented running back that can really take it to the next level. And we did not remember. You got to remember what he did 2 years ago, and then what he did with Andy Reid when they were still an average team, right, with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, I think really Buffalo does have a bad offensive line, and I give you that, but they do have a lot of potential pieces there that could make them something special.
Okay. I mean, both of you guys bring up very good points. It should be very interesting to see exactly how this Bills offense works out. I'm actually going to keep it on the path of the running back here, and let's talk about LaShawn McCoy's replacement in Philadelphia, DeMarco Murray. Well, we all know what he did last year with the Dallas Cowboys, and it was an incredible season. I think he shocked a lot of people coming out of the gate, starting really strong, just continuing all year. Didn't get injured like he had in the past, and really helped the Cowboys win that division and really come that one play away from even beating the Packers last year in the playoffs. So I'm going to start over here with Ron this time. And Ron, tell me your thoughts on DeMarco Murray and whether or not he's going to be able to duplicate his numbers without that big Dallas offensive line.
Well, he's going from one of the best offensive lines out there to Philly, which are they're kind of middle of the pack. But at the same time, we need to look at the offense that he's being implemented into. When we look at the big picture here, we got Chip Kelly, and we have his high-powered, high-octane offense backing him. So I think it's kind of a lateral move, if you ask me. At the end of the day, he's not going to have the high volume, and I think they are going to try and keep DeMarco Murray fresh. So we will see a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but I'm saying we'll see 5 to 10 carries a game from Ryan Matthews until he gets hurt. We'll see Darren Sproles serve his purpose, on a lot of packages for out of the backfield, the third downs, 3rd and 5s, and so on. So you're going to still see those two guys involved in this offense. So it's not going to be all Murray all day, all night. So, it's hard to project him without knowing exactly or having a clear idea of what the percentages are going to be. But based off what I think they're going to be, I still think this guy is a bona fide number 1 or a first-round draft pick any way you cut the cookie. And, whether or not he's in Dallas or in Philly, he's still going to a high-powered offense where they're going to need to run the football. And I think his opportunity for touchdowns is going to be just as high as it was in Dallas. So I like that also. And I think he serves in that offense. I think he serves that offense better than McCoy is because of what Dennis was touching on a little bit earlier. I think he mentioned something to the fact that McCoy's not a one-cut runner. He dances too much. Well, that's what Murray specializes in. He can make that one cut and then boom, he's gone. So that's why I do like Murray in this situation. And I think owners that are not picking him in the first round and not taking a shot at this guy and thinking, okay, now he doesn't have the best offensive line, I think you're making a huge mistake. And I'm targeting him in every league I can. And, if it's not a keeper or a dynasty in the first round or even a dynasty redraft, I would take him there in the first round and be happy as a clan.
Definitely. Well, I think the best point you made there is that there are guys who can handle the rock a little bit there in Philadelphia, whereas last year in Dallas, I don't think they were very comfortable handing the ball off to really anybody but DeMarco Murray. So I think the ability to hand the ball off to other people there in Philadelphia in that backfield will be able to keep Murray fresh and therefore very productive. So very good point on that one. Jeff, why don't you tell me your thoughts on DeMarco Murray?
I did tear when he left Dallas. So it was an emotional moment for me, when he left Dallas and everything. But, I also am a big Chip Kelly fan. Like, I love what he's doing in the NFL. I think it's great that he's turned the NFL on fire. And I think DeMarco Murray, to your point, he will be the volume leader. I don't think Ryan Matthews has been paid $11.5 million just to sit on the bench and be a Joseph Randle. But I think they're going to be dominating when it comes to rushes. The thing about DeMarco Murray that fits so well into the Chip Kelly offense is that he's a north-south runner, right? He will run you over. He might make that one cut, but he's going down he's not dancing. And that's one thing, probably what led to the McCoy separation is because the McCoy will get you 3 yards, but dance back 4 yards, then you end up with a negative 1 yard, and Chip Kelly's offense is all based on production and positive yards. So I think, when it comes to DeMarco Murray being that north-south runner, it's fit ideally into what Chip Kelly wants out of his running backs. And then you got Ryan Matthews there who's going to be just as good. Then you got Darren Sproles. I mean, the Eagles are going to be something that we will be talking about a lot this year.
Very, very interesting. I'd have to agree with you. I think they're going to be running the ball a lot. The loss of Jeremy Maclin, who hopefully we'll have some time to talk about later, is going to be impactful. And I'm not so sure about Sam Bradford's health leading the way there. So they might be relying a lot on that running game. Dennis, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I said earlier that I view Philadelphia as a drill bit offense, and now they got a power bit. And, if you remember last year, we all had a similar concern when Darren Sproles come in. Oh, man, Sproles is going to eat into McCoy's production because, they're kind of similar and, they can do the same things. Well, that didn't happen. It was still McCoy's backfield, and it's going to be DeMarco Murray's backfield. I think they signed Ryan Matthews, thinking that he was the best player available. And then once Murray came available, boom, now he's our guy. And I don't think it's going to be a committee approach like we think because it's not hard. Who would you guys rather have if you had to draft today? Are you drafting DeMarco Murray or Ryan Matthews based off of talent alone? Who you think's a better running back? it's going to be DeMarco Murray, and Chip Kelly's going to do the same thing. I have DeMarco Murray slated for about 270 carries, 4.5 to 4.6 yards per carry, about a 1,200-yard season. And I'm basing that off of his year's past production. If you remember, DeMarco Murray was the top 10 running back in Dallas before they had this tremendous line. And Philadelphia's line is no slouch. And the main concern with DeMarco Murray has never been talent. It's always been his health. Last year, he played a full 16-game season. He actually played with a broken arm in the fantasy playoffs for me. So he's earned my trust as far as that. As far as with Chip Kelly's regimen, if you see Philadelphia, they don't suffer a lot of injuries. I mean, I'm not saying they don't suffer any, but they got that intense workout regimen, so you don't have to deal with these small tissue issues and things like that. I mean, you can't help like contact issues and things like that because that's going to happen. That's football. So, it's a matter of health for me. And like I said, Murray answered that question for me last year. I'm having trust in him, and I've never seen a player fall so much after winning the rushing title, being a stud in fantasy, to fall in all the way back to the end of the first round. I can't remember that happening. Usually they end up like Le'Veon Bell. I mean, to me, there's not much difference. They change teams, but he's still going to get an opportunity. He's still going to be a guy. Like, are we concerned about Le'Veon Bell because D'Angelo Williams is on Pittsburgh's roster now? Absolutely not. And D'Angelo Williams is a good running back. Some could argue he's a better running back than Ryan Matthews, or at least equal. So, that argument doesn't concern me at all. So I'm buying Murray. I think he's a great value right now, and I would love to get him at the end of the first round.
So I think it's safe to say that we're all pretty big believers in DeMarco Murray, and hopefully he'll be able to keep that fumbling issue in check as well. It did get a little better throughout the season, but those first couple games last year, he was fumbling the ball left, right, and center. Let's keep it with the running backs and the NFC and talk about the Cowboys' new starting running back, pretty oft-injured Darren McFadden. I'm going to go and speak to our Cowboys fan, Jeff Nelson, and get his opinion on Darren McFadden and whether or not he's even going to be healthy by the time the season starts. Jeff?
Is he going to be healthy by the time the season starts? I don't know, man. I mean, Dallas had 509 attempts rushing the football, and I think Dallas still has one more move in them before the year is over. And maybe it's just a Cowboys fan and me hoping they get AP, or hopefully something we were talking earlier about before the show started about maybe being that 1980s reverse of a Herschel Walker trade or something. Dallas can give something up to get AP. I think Joseph Randle, his yak or something like that was like something insane, like 6-point-something yards per carry or something like that. It was ridiculous. And I don't think he's going to do that in Dallas because, like, if you look at a lot of his rushes, it was always in when the game was over and he was getting big bursts of yards towards the end of the year. So I think Joseph Randle let's first see if you can cash the check that your mouth is signing trying to sign right now. Like, I think Dallas and Darren McFadden, his health concerns me. He was a former first-round pick. He does have potential. Maybe the move to Dallas would help him out health-wise, but it's still – I think Dallas will be a running team, and I think, unfortunately, Dallas is going to a split back situation in Dallas. Like, I think they're going to be splitting the balls a lot in Dallas, and depending on who gets the ball this week and the opponent they're playing.
Okay. Well, that's definitely an interesting take. I mean, personally, I don't think McFadden's going to last more than 4 games.
Over under.
Yeah, I mean, I have very little faith in McFadden. I'm a Cowboys fan myself. I used to really like Darren McFadden when he first broke into the league, but I just don't think his body can hold up. I think they're going to have to rely a lot on Joseph Randle, or possibly, like you said, make an outside move. I know they invited a lot of veteran running backs to training camp this year and the OTAs and everything, so it'll be interesting to see if any of those guys shine. But I think it's going to be a very interesting situation to see exactly what they do there. Dennis, what do you think is going to be the case in Dallas with their running game? Do you think it'll be McFadden? Do you think it'll be Randall, or do you think it'll be some sort of outside help that we just don't know about yet?
Well, let's look and see what Dallas is telling us, okay? Did Dallas draft a running back? No. Did Dallas address it in free agency on a major level, like bring in some of the names that, the Ray Rices, the Chris Johnsons, the Morenos, even though Moreno's out with his injury for the rest of the year. But basically what I'm saying is Dallas feels like they have their guy, and that guy is Joseph Randle. So me as a fantasy owner, even though I may not agree with that, which me personally I do, because I don't think Joseph Randle is the same back that he was coming out of Oklahoma State. He's almost like Jack Napier fell into a vat of acid and come out as the Joker, because he ran with a nastiness last year in the NFL that I didn't see in college. I mean, that dude ran with an edge. And if you look at it in OTAs, who's getting the first team carries? Like, who's Dallas saying their starter? They're saying Joseph Randle. So I'm not going to overthink this and wait for some mysterious signing or some guy to fall off another team's practice roster. I'm going to invest my money in Joseph Randle. I'm going to trust Dallas on this one. They obviously feel like they have their guy. So who am I to argue? So we're all excited and say, oh, Dallas is, it doesn't matter who's back there carrying the ball, they're going to beast, because there's a stat where DeMarco Murray had like 1,100 yards last year before contact, which means the offensive line generated that many yards. He would have been fantasy running back number 10 just off that alone. So you're telling me Joseph Randle can't?
That's a fascinating stat. That's a very interesting stat to consider.
It's a very interesting stat. That line is that dominant, and then they just got Collins from LSU, so now they're even more dominant. Like, I could get back there and get 3 yards a carry. I mean, I run a 6.4 40. So, I mean, it's Joseph Randle, dude, and he's going in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th round right now. I'm taking it every time. I'm trying to trade for him. Or people who's having this attitude like, oh, it can't be Randle. Why can't it be Randle? What if I'd have told you this time last year, hey, Justin Forsett's going to be a top 5 running back? You'd say, oh, you're out of your mind. Well, I'm telling you right now, Joseph Randle will be a top 10 running back.
Well, it's fair to say, at least this analyst, Dennis here, is not much of a believer in McFadden and thinks that Joseph Randle is going to be the starter there. Ron, do you have anything to add to the Darren McFadden and now, I guess, Joseph Randle debate?
This is a situation that all fantasy owners better be watching, better be keeping tabs on, and you better know what's going on, because there's value to be had in this backfield. Now, it could become a full-blown committee, and that's my fear in the back of my head. I'm like, well, yeah, I want a piece of this pie. I don't care what piece it is, because one of these guys is, in my opinion, is going to be the guy. Okay, now we're asking the question, who's that guy going to be? Well, obviously we're all speculating at this point, but how many times us as fantasy owners are we going to get burned by Darren McFadden until we say, okay, I'm done with this guy? Already in OTAs, his hamstring's acting up. And that's what we come to expect with Darren McFadden. The question's never been the talent; it's always been the injury concerns that go with this player. So that to me is the number one reason why I would shy away from Darren McFadden completely. Now, I want to preface that by saying, on the other flip side of the coin, you have Joseph Randle, who's a 4th to 5th round ADP right now, and if everything progresses the way it is right now, and he is the starter, his ADP may even jump even higher than that. So my issue is, unless I'm like Dennis and I'm 100% sure that this is the guy, this guy's going to be that good. He threw out Justin Forsett as a good comparison last year. Unless I'm 100% sure, I can't burn a 4th or 5th round pick on a guy that I'm not sure about. So, prefacing what I just said, if McFadden's there late, I mean, I'm talking late, why not get a flyer on this guy and see what happens? I mean, if you get him later than, say, the 10th, 12th round, and he's out the 2nd or 3rd week of the season, then oh well, you cut him, you cut bait, and you go pick up another flyer. But to answer your question, if there's a guy that I think is going to take the ball and run with it and going to be the go-to guy for Dallas, I'm going to have to agree with Dennis on his stance, and I'm going to say it's Joseph Randle. I'm just saying that I don't know that I can realistically burn that high of a draft pick just to get this guy. But I would like to get as many pieces of the Dallas running back pie as I can get. So, I'll also throw out Ryan Williams.
So, Ron, what you're basically saying to our listeners and our viewers here is that whether or not it's Randle, McFadden, or anybody else running the ball in Dallas, you're willing to take one of those guys simply based on the fact that they have that offensive line and that whoever's running the ball there is going to be productive?
Exactly. It's like playing the lottery. You know, you don't win unless you go out and actually buy a ticket. You don't even have a chance to win. So, from that aspect, I'm looking at the Dallas backfield just like that. And actually, Dennis is the one that brought this up to me a long time ago. Dennis says, you know, when there's questions in a backfield, I want to go there. I want to look at that, and I want to take some shots on these guys where there's a question in any team out there. If there's questions in the backfield, you may end up with the next Zach Stacy. You know, 2013 had a great year. So, excuse me. My point here is that the other guys I didn't even talk about, the guys running with first team OTAs right now are obviously Randall and, believe it or not, Lance Dunbar. So Lance Dunbar, in my opinion, is a dark horse here. And I didn't even talk about Ryan Williams. Haven't even brought him up. So those are two guys that I would be watching. Take flyers late on Dunbar if you can, especially PPR. And then, you know, you could probably burn a last-round pick on a guy like Ryan Williams. And what do you lose if he's a nobody? You cut
Well,
bait.
you're right. It's definitely worth monitoring that situation. Let's keep it in the state of Texas. We'll move over to the defensive side of the ball again. I'm going to start with Jeff. Jeff, tell me your thoughts on the addition of Vince Wilfork for the Texans. Are you still with us, Jeff?
I am here, sir. Yes, sir. My thing is the Vincent Wilfork sign for the Texans this year really makes that defense that Romeo Crennel runs, which is called the psycho defense, where they put two down linemen and they're very aggressive, right, with their blitzes. And if they confuse their quarterback a lot, especially the protection of the line, by saying who you picking up blocking, and it's really a gap aggressive defense. It's the psycho defense. It's really a 4-3-3-4 mix. But I think when you add and you compare him, and you add him with J.J. Watt, and then you add him with they have J.J. Watt there, which is scary to me. And then you got Brian Cushing, who's a great linebacker that's come back. And then you got this dude named Clowney, who wasn't really that good last year. I think they're going to take steps forward this year. And Vincent Wilfork, it was a key piece to New England, and it really hurt Bill Belichick, I believe, to let him go. And I think, you know, he can cloud up that A gap and maybe even take up, you know, front side A gap, or maybe even take up front side A gap and push the center and the guard together where, you know, two of them got to take on the blocks to sit there and block him and contain him, where now J.J. Watt is going to be where he's my number one. I'm keeping J.J. Watt in League 1 in our IDP league because he just can average as much as a freaking wide receiver. Or, I mean, not wide receiver, but an offensive skill player. So I think he's going to be just – that defense is going to be something scary this year to watch out for.
Well, with Vince Wilfork, it's definitely a huge addition to their already extremely talented defense. The question I have for you and the rest of these guys is, do you think that it puts the Texans in a position to battle with the Colts top of that division?
Offense, right? I mean, the Colts they have too much talent. They're too scary on their offense side of football, where they will, you know, they're going to be great this year. Like, they're a dark horse to go to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. But Houston and their defense, they're going to win a lot of games when it comes to defense, but for them to overtake the Colts, I don't think it's going to happen. And that's just based on me saying the Colts and Cowboys will be playing in the Super Bowl this year. That's my prediction right now.
Okay, we'll go over to Ron. Ron, do you have an answer to my question? How do you think Wilfork will impact the Texans, and will they be able to battle the Colts at the top of that division?
Well, I think this addition is going to help them out a lot in the front. I mean, he even at age 33, you know, he remains one of the NFL's premier run stuffers. So I mean, I like the addition, and you know, he graded out as a top 6 run defending 3-4 nose tackle. So again, what's not to like about this addition? And I think at the end of the day, they're just getting that much stronger. You know, the question marks, though, to answer your second question, as far as the division goes, which I actually like Jeff's call, and I was saying the same thing, and I've said it in a couple of podcasts I've done, is I really like the Colts this year, and everybody keeps saying, well, the defense sucks, they can't do this, they can't. I mean, hey, if they can score 45 points a game, you know, they're going to win, you know, 80 to 90% of their games if they can just, you know, put up that many points. So, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl, but I definitely like Jeff's pick of them going to the Super Bowl, and I'm on board with that pick because I've said it myself before. In that division, I don't see anybody holding, coming close to where they're at. Even with their defense, with the holes they have, they just can score that much. They can be that explosive to the point that, I asked Dennis about his projections for Andrew Luck, but I mean, I see Luck doing at least throwing between 40 and 45 touchdown passes this year. So you do the numbers in the yardage and the other pieces that they added. I mean, what's not to like about the Colts offense in general? And they add these wily veterans, Gore and Johnson. And Johnson's never had a quarterback. When's the last time Andre Johnson had a quarterback could throw the ball to him and get it to him? So I like all those pieces they're adding. So at the end of the day, I think Texans are going to finish second in that division. I think they will have a chance to sneak into the playoffs. It's possibly a wild card team. But at the end of the day, I don't think with the quarterback situation, I don't think they're primed to make any type of a playoff run at all.
Yeah, well, I think what you're saying is very interesting, especially with regards to the Colts, their offense and their defense, because typically when you have a team that is so strong on one side of the ball, specifically the offensive side of the ball, it definitely keeps that defense on the sideline and rested. And you saw it last year a little bit with the Cowboys, and you've seen it in the past with New England. Teams that dominate the offensive side of the ball, eat a lot of the clock up, and keep their defense on the sidelines typically have a recipe for success. Dennis, do you agree with that? Do you think that the Colts offense being as dominant as it is and being on the field for so long will help keep that defense fresh and at least serviceable throughout the season?
I do, but you're going to kill me. I want to circle back to what we was talking about. I'm kind of the circle back king, but I've been just sitting here stewing on our last conversation over Joseph Randle. I don't know if it's your Dallas Cowboys blanket in the corner of my screen, Lou, or not, but I just want to throw this out there because Ron said something about he don't want to burn a 5th round pick on the wrong guy in the Dallas backfield. Okay, but yet Carlos Hyde is going in the 3rd round. What's the difference between Carlos Hyde's situation and Joseph Randle's? Okay, let's analyze it. You got Carlos Hyde, you got Randle, you got Reggie Bush, you got McFadden, you got Mike Davis, you got whoever else, Ryan Williams. Like, we're all banking and believing in Hyde, or well, I am not personally, but that's a different story. But most people's banking on Hyde to be the next man up. Okay, now he's got the chance. Gore's gone. Well, Murray's gone. Let's burn a 3rd round pick on this guy who we've seen a limited sample size. And if you compare the sample size Joseph Randle put out last year and the sample size Carlos Hyde put out last year, Randle outperformed him on every aspect. Now add in the difference between San Francisco is just imploding. I mean, they got players retiring, players leaving a free agency, their coach is fired, new coaching regime. Well, Dallas is stable for the first time in years, like at least on the outside looking in. Their line is it's the best line they've had since the mid-'90s. Probably it's the best line I've seen in the last I don't even know how long. But when you compare those two players in a situation, that to me I'm just like, what's the difference? Like, to me it feels like Joseph Randle's a little safer than Carlos Hyde. Now maybe it's because the pedigree coming out of college was different, because Hyde was a better pedigree coming out. I give you that, but that don't always mean everything. Look at Arian Foster's pedigree as an undrafted free agent. I mean, like, to me, can the dude play? Yes, he can play. But I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that before I go back to the Colts, but I was just sitting over here stewing with that.
I'm sure you all do want to respond to that, but I do want to be able to get to a number of the other players here today, and we are starting to run short on time. I will, however, ask you guys to give me some final thoughts towards the end of the show. So do make some notes about things that you do want to discuss, and we will come back to you about those players. I was going to talk about Greg Hardy, but I don't think there's as much to talk about right now, considering that he's going to be out of the lineup for quite some time. I do want to ask you guys quickly, though, just kind of give me a yes or no answer as to whether or not you think that he will be impactful or not when he does return to the lineup. And Ron, I'll start with you.
I didn't catch.
Well, yeah, what I was saying is just give me a quick kind of yes or no on whether or not you think Greg Hardy's going to be effective when he returns to the lineup for the Cowboys.
My resounding answer would be yes. He's going to definitely make a big difference in that line, and you got to think that he's going to come back hungry, pissed off, mad at the world. He's got all these instead of doing things he shouldn't on the outside of football. He needs to take all his anger, aggression out on the field, and I think that's what he's going to do. So I'll keep it short and sweet. Yes, I think he's going to be a major addition to key acquisition for the Dallas Cowboys defense, and he's going to be a leader.
Jeff, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with Ron. I think Greg Hardy's going to be a significant pickup for Dallas in the middle of the year. I think he's just going to be an incredible free agent pickup that puts Dallas over the top and get them in that in the Super Bowl next year. He's just going to be key. He's going to be key to that defense going forward when he returns from suspension.
Okay. I would have to agree with that. I do want to talk about, there's one player specifically that I've been dying to talk about. When this trade occurred in the offseason, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a prank. It just made absolutely no sense to me. And I'm going to start with Dennis here. Jimmy Graham, from New Orleans to Seattle. Seattle pretty much was a yard away from winning the Super Bowl for the second straight season. Realistically, as hard as it is for me to say as a Cowboys fan, probably the favorite again in the NFC is the Seahawks to me. And tell me the impact that a guy like Jimmy Graham is going to have on this offense, not only rushing the ball, but for Russell Wilson to have such an incredible big target in the middle of the field.
Well, when it initially happened, I kind of had that knee-jerk reaction, a kind of overreaction at first. I'm like, man, this sucks. There went Jimmy Graham's value. Now all we have is Rob Gronkowski. Hopefully Kelsey hits. But, the more I thought about it and the more I thought about what Jimmy Graham does and the kind of quarterback Russell Wilson is, the more I actually liked it. And I think Jimmy Graham is a great value right now going in the third round, because what has Seattle been lacking? What has everybody been saying? Oh, Seattle needs a legitimate wide receiver. They tried to get that, and Percy Harvin wasn't able. So they got a bunch of number twos, number threes, and they've made it work so far, right? Well, Jimmy Graham, to me, is a wide receiver and a tight end. He's a wide receiver one, slotted as a tight end, basically. So Russell Wilson's got his number one receiver, and Russell Wilson throws one of the best seam passes in the NFL. It's a thing of beauty. And what's Jimmy? He's a seam-ripping tight end. So I really like it. And the targets may not be there, but if you look at it, Seattle led the league in splash plays, which is, long plays. So they're an explosive offense, man. They sit there and pound the ball with Lynch, and then bam, hit you over the top. And that's perfect for Jimmy Graham. So I actually like it. And there's not as big a gap between Gronkowski and Graham as people might think, for me at least. I can tell you my projections is I have Jimmy Graham at 72 receptions with about a 15-yard average. So, that still puts him right over 1,000 yards. And I think he's going to still be that red zone target. I mean, we've seen in the playoff games with Chris Matthews what Russell Wilson can do with a big target. How much better is Jimmy Graham than Chris Matthews? So I like it, man, and I think he's a great value. He's still definitely the number 2 tight end on my board, and it to me, who it helps the most is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was already a top 5 fantasy quarterback with his rushing alone. Now you add in that red zone target and the yards he's going to be able to get from Jimmy Graham, because it's not only as how many, it's not always dependent on just the quarterback. Good players make stats, they make their own stats. They do these things. So, I used to look at it as, when I first got in it, it's I'd start with the quarterback only and he's only going to do this, and then I would divide it out. But I never took into consideration okay, Demaryius Thomas getting a little 5-yard screen and taking it 80 yards to the house. Good players make plays. So I'm not having a knee-jerk reaction, and I'm surprised that Graham is his ADP is not climbing, because once people had time to kind of think about this and realize it's not as bad. It's not to me, Julius Thomas going to Jacksonville, that was a death nail for him. But whereas Jimmy Graham, I think he's a different caliber talent. He's not taking a huge downgrade at QB. So to me, I'm still all in.
Yeah, well, I would have to totally agree with you. I think the Seahawks can win games purely with Marshawn Lynch, Jimmy Graham, and Russell Wilson, forgetting about the fact that their defense is as good as it is, and the rest of the players they have there. Those three guys alone can win you football games. Ron, quickly, your thoughts on Graham? Is he the second tight end in fantasy? Is it possible that he can be the first with Brady being out for a little bit of time and not throwing the ball to Gronkowski? Is someone else going to emerge?
Well, I think with the tight end position, we all know. I mean, pretty much you got Gronk up here, and then everybody else. I mean, he's on his own tier, and then you got everybody else below that. But the next guy after Gronk, there's no doubt in my mind, is Jimmy Graham. And this move doesn't really scare me that much. We all have been saying it for a long time, and everybody just assumes that they are a run-first team. But let's go back, rewind, look at the Super Bowl, look at the last play, look at how it ended, and you tell me that they're going to go out there this year. I mean, I still think that they're going to, with Russell Wilson in the whole contract thing and everything, I think he's going to want to change some things up a little bit and pass a little bit more going forward. And I do think that now he has that weapon that he hasn't had. And just like Dennis said, I mean, you got to look at Jimmy Graham as not only one of the best tight ends out there, but one of the best wide receivers out there. Because I mean, that's exactly what he did in New Orleans down the bayou. I mean, that's what he did. I mean, he was a wide receiver / tight end, you know, and that's why I like him so much. Now, I think his targets are going to definitely, we'll see a little bit of decrease in the targets, but I'm optimistic that he can maybe possibly score even more touchdowns in Seattle than he did last year, and I think he'll bounce back.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Absolutely. I think he's going to score a lot more touchdowns, actually. I think Seattle is going to be a type of team that is in the red zone very frequently, and I think the threat of Marshawn Lynch in the red zone will only open up the possibility of touchdown passes for Jimmy Graham. Jeff, quickly before we move on, anything you want to add about Graham?
I just think why Graham it's amazing that he's dropped this year, where a year ago he was like up there with Gronk, right? I think Dennis and Ron are spot on. 72, Ron, that's a low in my opinion. I could see him getting 80 to 85 receptions this year. Like if you really think about their passing game, besides Curse, and maybe Baldwin, Graham is going to be heavily involved in their game, in their passing game, and it's going to be where he was 2 years ago as people drafted him in the first round. Nobody draft him before the third round. Let him fall to me. I'll be happy with that. I'll be happy with that this whole year.
Well, this brings me over to two wide receivers who both changed teams this year. We've brought them both up unintentionally so far in this show. But I'm going to start with Dennis, and this is going to be the type of situation where I want you guys to simply just tell me which of these players is going to have a bigger effect on their new team and why. So we're going to be breaking down Jeremy Maclin and Andre Johnson. Starting with you, Dennis, which of these guys is going to have a bigger impact and why?
Andre Johnson, and I don't even have to go into big detail. Andre Johnson, Andrew Luck. It's that simple
fair
to me.
Fair enough. Definitely fair enough. I mean, I personally do agree with that, but you have to remember that the Colts already have a pretty explosive offense, and the Chiefs, they had a lot of trouble scoring passing touchdowns last year. I don't believe they scored one until week 14 or even 15 last year. So at the end of the day, it's very possible that Maclin might have a bigger impact on the Chiefs. That's just personally my opinion. Andre Johnson will put up better numbers.
I'm glad this is all volunteer. I'm glad this is all volunteer. We don't pay you for your opinion there, Lou, because you're nuts if you think at all that Andre Johnson is not going to be a better fantasy impact compared to that boy Jermaine Maclin.
I didn't ask fantasy impact though. That was not the question. I agree that Andre Johnson is going to put up better numbers. What I asked is who's going to have a bigger impact on their team, and that to me
same answer.
Because the Chiefs really needed a guy like Jeremy Maclin, the Colts still have T.Y. Hilton amongst others, and their offense is already very strong.
One question here. I'm gonna toss it back to you. Who's the quarterback again for Kansas City? Can he
His
throw
name
the
is
ball
Alex
past 10
Smith, and I
yards?
think he's very underrated. I also think that Andy Reid is a
Andrew
hell of a
Luck.
coach and is very familiar with Jeremy Maclin.
Give me Andrew Luck and Andre Smith or Andre Johnson all day, and I take that all day.
Yeah, they'll put up
Okay.
better numbers, no doubt. They'll put up better numbers. Just the impact on the Chiefs' offense is going to be greater with Maclin, in my opinion. Ron, your thoughts?
Well, let me first say, Lou, you are on your own island here because I'm all in on Andre Johnson. I agree with Jeff and Dennis. Sometimes it's nice to be on your own island, but in this case, I'll just say one thing real quick. Take this into consideration, Lou. 5 out of 10 touchdowns that Jeremy Maclin caught last year were of the 20-yard variety or more. Now, just saying, piggybacking on what Jeff just said, we have Captain Checkdown, a.k.a. Alex Smith, who's not known for throwing deep passes. I mean, he's that Ryan Tannehill, maybe a little bit better, more accurate, more experienced, and he can run a little bit more. But at the end of the day, he's not going to be that guy to throw the pigskin more than 20 yards, and that's why I don't like Maclin at all. And he's those 5 out of 10 touchdowns, I think you can cut that in half. And realistically, I'm looking at 6 to maybe 7, and that's on the high end of touchdowns for Maclin this year. Whereas I see Andre Johnson as potentially a 1,000-yard receiver and anywhere in the range of, I know this is going to sound crazy, 8 to 10 touchdowns. That's all I have to say.
No, none of that sounds crazy at all. I agree with all those Andre Johnson stats, but 7 touchdowns from Jeremy Maclin would be, I believe, 5 more than the next best receiver had for the Chiefs last year. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty interesting debate when you break down their actual impact for their teams. Fantasy-wise, there's no doubt. I agree with you guys. Andre Johnson is the superior player. Just keeping with the Colts for a second, what are your guys' thoughts on? I'm going to start with Dennis on Frank Gore coming over from San Francisco.
I like it for Gore, but in the context of your question, yes, I agree with you. Maclin will impact the Chiefs more than Andre Johnson will the Colts because
Yes.
the Colts was running like a well-oiled machine, and now the Chiefs have a playmaker. I didn't understand the context of your question, so with that in the context, yes, I agree. But as far as Frank Gore, man, Frank Gore's always been a solid running back. Frank Gore, when he come out of Miami, was a hell of a receiver, and a lot of people forget that. So I think you add in some more receptions into his numbers, I think he has an even higher ceiling. And he has a pretty high floor, in my opinion. I'm not going to bet against him just yet, even though in the back of my mind, it's like every year we're like, okay, Frank Gore's going to hit the cliff this year. He's going to hit the cliff. He's going to hit the cliff. And then he doesn't. Well, now everybody's like, Frank Gore's invincible. He's never going to hit the cliff. Well, this is probably the year that he does that. So I do like Frank Gore. I love the fit. I love the ideal of it. But will his body wear down? We'll see. I am definitely going to back him up with a Josh Robinson or whoever, emerges as the number 2. It could be Dan Herron again for all I know. But, I'm still taking shots on Gore in the 3rd round because I'm the type of fantasy owner that I take as many pieces of explosive offenses as I can. I want a good quarterback with my running back. I want to, same with my receivers because you marry the quarterback. Your receiver is married to your quarterback. So that's why we seen Emmanuel Sanders, put up the numbers he did last year. That's why my answer was so simplistic with Andrew Luck and Andre Johnson. It's just that instant upgrade where them quarterbacks make players better, and Andrew Luck is definitely that guy that makes players better. So yeah, I like Gore, and yeah, why not? I don't know that I would like him as my running back 1 unless I went like receiver early, or I took Gronk and then maybe another good receiver and then got Gore in the 3rd. But if Gore's on the board in the 3rd round and there's not some great value that's fell there, then I take him every time.
Okay, I would have to agree with your thoughts on Gore. And before I go over to Ron about Gore, I do want to bring up that we do have a comment from one of our viewers who says that Andre Johnson is the better player. However, Maclin will have the bigger team impact. So just to go back on that, it's an interesting discussion. I mean, it depends how you look at it. I think we are all in agreement that Andre Johnson is the better player, will have better fantasy numbers, but the impact-wise on a team, clearly Jeff doesn't agree, and I'm not sure Ron does either.
Lou, did you really put that comment up there so you're not on the island by yourself anymore? Was that you really that did that? You can be honest with us right now.
No, it wasn't me, but I have a feeling I do know who it was, so I appreciate them chiming in. But let's keep with Frank Gore for now, because we are running a little low on time. I do want to get your guys' opinions on Frank Gore and then discuss two defensive players before we wrap things up. So, Jeff, tell me what you think about Frank Gore and his impact on the Colts.
I mean,
you know what? We're having a little bit of difficulty with you. Then I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Ron.
Well, with Frank Gore, I think this situation is going to be, it's a plug and play. I mean, you got a wily veteran. I mean, the thing about Gore was he was dependent on so much at San Francisco over the Bay to be that, high volume back. I mean, Carlos Hyde was a rookie last year. The thing with Gore was he always wore down the second half of the season. Realistically, if you look at the history, historically speaking, he's a first half running back. Okay, when he's fresh, he's great. When he's getting the volume, he's great. So the second half is when he wears down in the season. As far as that's concerned, I don't think we're going to have those concerns in Indy. First off, looking at it, another stat that I was just reading, Frank Gore ran against 8 or more defenders in the box, the league high 76 times last year. So 76 times last year he had 8 or more defenders to go up against. So, I mean, that in itself should tell you all you need to know. You're going from San Francisco, where that was the scenario, to Indy, where it's a high-powered, high-octane passing offense, and they don't depend so much on the running game. They don't need to. So that's why I really like Gore, and this is probably one of the biggest free agent acquisitions, I think, outside of DeMarco Murray and probably, McCoy. But anyway, moving on, I think that the sky's the limit, and like Dennis said, if he's going in the 4th round, and I'll just say this, I mean, if you can get Joseph Randle in the 5th round, and people are taking him in the 5th round, and you can get Frank Gore in the 4th round, I just feel safer taking Frank Gore in the 4th round than I would taking Dennis's boy Randle in the 5th round. To also really quickly answer Dennis's question, I'm all with him. If I'm going to take a shot on a running back, I'm taking a shot on the better situation. I would take Randle any day over Hyde with his ADP. I'm not high on Hyde.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff, let's see if your technical difficulties have subsided here, and hear what you have to say about Frank Gore.
I mean, look, I think Ron and Dennis nailed it on the head with Frank Gore. I mean, there's really nothing to add here because I think Frank Gore is going to be that great back out there. I think he will help that team out a lot going forward. And don't forget, they still have Bradshaw there, so they're putting together a Super Bowl run team out there, and they're going to be. I'm okay with Frank Gore being in the 4th round, 5th round pick.
I would have to agree with you all on that one. Well, we're running low on time, so I do want to discuss these 2 more players before we end things here today. Haloti Ngata and Ndamukong Suh. Which player do you guys think is going to have a better fantasy season? I know that if you look at pure skill, size, talent, Suh is probably the guy that you're going to have on your team, a team guy you want to kind of build a defense around. But based on fantasy, exactly, only fantasy, talking from that point of view, Jeff, who do you think is going to have a bigger impact on a fantasy roster?
Based on fantasy, when you're referring to IDP leagues, it's just going to be Ngata. And it kills me to say that, but he's one of the top interior linemen year after year, and that's even when he was with the Ravens and what he did with the Ravens. Now, Suh, he's going to be great but he's always never really been a tackler in behind. He's always been taking on 2 blocks, trying to let everybody be successful. Like a guy on Miami I would go with is Cameron Wake. He's going to have a big year this year because Sue's going to really clog him up and let him get free. But, I mean, if you're looking at these 2 players just on a purely IDP stand and not what is best for the team overall, as we referred to earlier, let's talk about this Nada all the way. I mean, he's such an aggressive front out there, and I think he'll be very successful this year.
I totally agree with you, and that's why I phrased it how I did, because I don't think there's a doubt that Sue is the better, the bigger, stronger, bigger impact overall. But I would have to agree with you on the Nada front. Ron, quickly, your thoughts on which one of these guys is going to have a bigger impact on a fantasy roster?
Well, quickly, it's a shame that Brian Robinson couldn't be with us, even though Dennis is killing it today for us, because he wrote an article on both these players that he wrote an article this week on Major League Fantasy Sports. So you guys go check that out. On a sidebar, this is a tough question. It really is, because you look at the situation. I would have to tend to say I'm going to go with the guy that is younger and in the better situation, has better supporting cast. So I'm going to have to go Sue all the way, even though I don't like his antics and I don't like his foot stomping, helmet stomping. His character concern me. But, hey, at the end of the day, fantasy is all about winning, and it's about taking the player. In my opinion, I'm a high upside guy. I know Dennis would agree with me on that. He's the same type of guy I am. I'm going with the high upside player, even in an IDP league. I just think that, to phrase it this way, as far as the team needs, I think not as better, but I think Sue's going to have a better fantasy season because he has those other pieces around him. Cameron Wake. He also has Vernon, who's a young player. I think his 3rd season. So he's going to help those guys so much, and they're going to help him at the same time. So I'm going Sue all the way.
All right, and Dennis, your thoughts? Same question.
Where there's close battles like this, I tend to let the schedule be the tiebreaker. And let me read you Ndamukong Suh's first 6-week schedule. He faces RG3, Blake Bortles, Tyrod Taylor or EJ Manuel, Geno Smith, Marcus Mariota, Brian Hoyer. I mean, to me, that tells me all I need to know right there. And then you couple that with the NFC East quarterbacks, that's question marks, playing them twice a year. So, to me, the quarterback, distributes everything. So if you got a weak link at quarterback, I think the defense is going to feast. So that's the only reason I'm going to say Sue.
Okay. Well, I mean, both of these guys are big acquisitions for their roster, so it's really tough to have a right answer. I think the idea here is that you guys definitely provided some good points of view on both players and kind of let the fans make a decision for themselves based on the information you guys provided.
Lou, you're the tiebreaker. Come on. It's 2 for Sue, 1 for Nada. You got to commit. Let's go.
I probably would have to go with Sue. Especially after what Dennis just added with the schedule. I'm big on the looking at the schedule when fantasy
exactly. I got to give Dennis props. Sorry to cut you off, Lou. That was a great point, though.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. I mean, I didn't even look at it. And at the end of the day, man, wow. That's all I can say. That schedule. Wow.
Can we say?
Stream Miami week.
No, all right. So this is an IDP reference, right? We're basing this all on IDP, not team defenses, right? And when you look at Nada, he was a double figure. He averaged double-digit points in our league settings compared to what Sue averaged. So Nada is just I get the schedule is impactful, but I think at the end of the day, Nada is gonna blow him away during the first 6 weeks. We got this recorded. We'll go back. We're gonna break this down, see who's the winner here.
Yeah, I can't wait till week 7 of the NFL season when we can look back at those first 6 weeks and see how Sue fared against those players. Well, we do have a little bit of time before I need to sign off here today with you guys. So instead of talking about any more players specifically, I'd like to hear from you guys about which player overall that changed teams this year. And someone we've talked about or haven't talked about, who is going to be the most impactful for their team. Not fantasy, but for their team. And I'll give you guys a couple seconds to think about this.
Don't need none.
Okay, well then we'll start with Jeff. Jeff.
Andre Johnson.
Okay.
He put the Colts in the Super Bowl. Him and his move over this year, going to the Colts and having Andrew Luck, finally a quarterback that knows how to get the ball to him.
That's a good point though, because nothing away from Matt, taking nothing away from Matt Schaub a couple of years ago. He's certainly nothing like Andrew Luck. So it's definitely a good point. It'll be interesting to see a guy like that have, a very capable quarterback. Ron, how about you?
It's funny because I'm going to stay with the same team here, guys, and I'm going to say Frank Gore from the U.
Out of the U.
The U.
And Dennis, how about you?
Come on, guys. We just talked about Jimmy Graham. Already a Super Bowl caliber team, and now they got Jimmy Graham? How is that not the biggest blockbuster move of this offseason?
Because they're not going to be in the Super Bowl.
Well, it doesn't matter. I play fantasy. I don't care about who wins the Super Bowl.
It's kind of like putting a nice bow on that present, man. That present's not complete until it has a nice bow on it. I think that's what they're doing with Jimmy Graham. They're putting a bow on that big present.
I think that if I had to pick between the three players you guys selected, I would definitely go with Jimmy Graham as well. I'm a big believer in him, and I love the fact that you can slot a guy in the tight end position that can put up wide receiver numbers. I do want to thank all you guys for coming on here today and spending time with us on your Saturdays. I know everyone's very busy doing their things with family and whatever it might be, or just having a nice relaxing day. Jeff, is there anything you want to add before you say goodbye today?
Andre Johnson, that's all. We'll leave it there.
Dennis, how about you?
Dennis, we had a good connection that you messed it up with the Jimmy Graham. Call him come on. Dennis, with that Giants hat you got on. I give you pity. That Giants hat you got on.
It goes with my Odell Beckham jersey.
Now, he's one hell of a talent.
Is he a first-round pick? Can we say he's a first-round pick?
We'll talk about him next week for sure. I bet we will, Odell Beckham Jr. Dennis, is there anything you want to add, though, before we let you go?
Nah, man, I appreciate you guys having me on. I had a good time.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and we hope to have you on again soon. So please let us know, and we'd love to have you on again soon. I do want to mention that to any basketball fans out there, if you're looking for the best fantasy experience, you should check out the Major League Fantasy Sports basketball leagues. Again, you can email majorleaguefantasysports@gmail.com. Let's move over to baseball for just a moment. Firstly, I'm a Yankees fan, so I got to mention congratulations to Alex Rodriguez for his 3,000th hit. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding that with PED use and everything, but 3,000 hits is still 3,000 hits. And
the needle tracks.
And I think I should definitely mention that you guys should not forget to check out the Major League Fantasy Sports Baseball Show, which is every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern on Sportspalooza Radio. You guys can check out the rest of their shows on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursdays as well. Thank you to the rest of our partners, White River Graphics, for providing these beautiful backdrops here, and ChandlerPark.com and Real Deal Dynasty Sports. You should be sure to check out the Major League Fantasy Sports online shop. There are great items for purchase, and I encourage you all to take a look. Ron, before we say goodbye to you, is there anything you want to add?
Oh, I just want to say that this is a great first show, guys. I think we hit it out of the park. We killed it, and I really appreciate Dennis coming on last second notice. I mean, it's hard to get somebody to come on the show, an hour or two ahead of time, and like in front of the show. So I really appreciate him doing that for us. And we just got a great community, and I think everybody works together. And I'm looking forward to bringing him back on the show in the future. And I think this is a show that we're hopefully going to keep doing, keep rolling it out there. And we're going to have some big name guests coming up. So we're saving our big guns for a little bit later. But I just want to say Dennis did a hell of a job today, and also Jeff, X's and O guy. I mean, he really breaks it down.
He doesn't come back with that Giants crap anymore. That's just insulting. Like, leave that crap at home. All right.
Well, here at Major League Fantasy Sports, we do encourage our fans to submit questions during the week so that we can then answer on our show for them. So please email your questions to me at LouLandersFootball@gmail.com. I would like to wish a happy Father's Day to all the dads out there and let everyone know that we'll be back next Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join us again for another edition of Major League Fantasy Football Weekly. Until then, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Take care, guys.